Greetings, amigops, and top teners everywhere. If this is your first top 10, welcome here. If you're coming back to us, welcome back. I am your co-host Kyle. Opposite me today, as he is every week, is your still lusciously bearded co-host Michael. This week, as we do every week, one of us will be bringing a topic to the table. This week it's Mike's, and I don't know anything about it. I have no idea what it is. He's let slip a few hints, so I think I might know the direction we're going. But we'll see. He's going to provide a top 10 version of that list, at which point we will vigorously debate.
Close enough for
By the end of this episode,
yeah. All right, you got her.
Come to the definitive version of this top 10 list. Michael, what will we be discussing this week?
All right, K-Dog. So I think what you're referring to when you say I've let slip a few things, I mentioned to you that the topic we'll be discussing this week is timely, but it was accidentally timely. That's the important thing to remember. I've been thinking a lot about this topic, and it just so happened that this past weekend brought this topic to the fore. So we are recording right now, January 22nd of the year 2019, the year of our Lord.
Yes.
Which is just 2 days, I believe. What is it today? Tuesday, I think?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's Tuesday. So this past Sunday, we had one of the greatest days of football in my memory. I mean, it was Championship Sunday. So we had the AFC Championship game featuring the Kansas City Chiefs and the New England Patriots. That was the 6:40 kickoff, but the 3:05 kickoff was the New Orleans Saints and the Los Angeles Rams. So two great games, both decided late, and both containing a lot of controversial rulings. So the worst call in the history of sports, I think, it's hard to be sure, but I think it's safe to say that this will be on the list, was the missed pass interference call in the Saints-Rams game. Ended up pretty directly costing the Saints a chance to play in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And it was egregious. So this was a lucky stroke that everybody right now is thinking about bad calls. I want to talk about a slightly different issue. It's bad rules.
Huh.
In all of sports.
Whoa.
So the rule that people are revisiting, which we will discuss at some point during this list, is the possibility of reviewing all plays in football, including potentially calls like pass interference. So people are all speculating, what is the rule change that could have prevented this travesty of justice from happening? Something like that. Would it be a legitimate process to protest the game? What is the rule change that could fix this? So I want to talk about rules in sports that are just tremendously screwed up.
Any sport?
Professional? No, not necessarily, because there are certain cases where there are rules that are at the amateur level that are different than the pro level that I think are worth pointing out.
Okay.
So here are the two criteria that I'm mainly judging on. So first and most importantly is egregiousness of this stupid rule. So how stupid is this rule? / like how much does it impact the game? So that's sort of a bundle. Those are really two different things, but I'm sort of bundling them as one. It's like how egregiously stupid and how egregious is the impact of this thing. The other thing is how easy would it be to fix? And I think that that's where we get into the sticky situations.
Yeah.
Is there a lot of rules that we all feel and sense are screwed up, but that would be really hard to actually fix in practice?
What are your thoughts on something that is an issue, but there's no rule against it? So stupid non-rules.
I would consider that in this category. Okay. I don't know if I have any there, but that would definitely be in play.
I'm just because I can think of one right off the top of my head, but we can discuss in more detail whether or not that fits. And that might just be an outlier.
Yeah. And one thing I want to note about this list is I actually don't have honorable mentions. And the reason I don't have honorable mentions is because I was afraid to Google this topic. So when you and I do research on topics like this, we usually end up on topics where it's not so obvious that there would be a top 10 list, and so we're not afraid to bump into them on the internet. Yeah. This one I had a feeling if I Googled it, I was going to bump into a bunch of top 10s. So I stayed away. So I don't have as many as I might usually, because I really just pulled this out of my ass.
Excellent. I really like the disclaimer.
Yeah, I want it to be pure in my methods, but that means there are fewer things.
Okay.
All right, so let's kick it off. So number 10 is a rule from that great league, the National Football League.
The NFL for short.
The NFL for short.
Yeah.
The No Fun League.
Yeah.
So this is the rule in which a runner with the ball fumbles the ball into the pylon at the front of the goal line, and that is ruled a touchback. The other team gets the ball then at their own 20-yard line.
Okay.
So this scenario...
So let's say I am Kyle, running back, and I am running towards the end zone.
Yep.
And through some reason, Michael A, safety comes up behind and punches the ball out, let's say, and I throw the ball forward. I'm like at the 2-yard line, and the football hits the orange pylon at the corner of the front of the end zone. That's what's happened here. Okay.
Yes. So what I really like about the scenario you presented is that you've presented the logical scenario, which is that the ball has been fumbled before the touching of the pylon. And so I'll get to why, but this is why this rule is as low on this list as it is. Because there is a logical basis for this rule, which is that if a person were to fumble the ball through the back of the end zone, it's only logical that the other team would get a touchback. There really is no remedy for this other than that, because it would allow the offensive team to just sort of do a fumble-rooski play. Like there are a lot of weird outcomes if you don't give the ball to the defense in the case of a fumble through the back of the end zone. So, if we follow logically from that, we have to say that if you fumble into the pylon, the same thing has to happen because the pylon is, for our purposes, the end zone. It acts exactly the same way as the end zone, so we'd have to follow that rule must be the same. So in your scenario where somebody fumbles the ball from like the 2-yard line into the pylon, I'm with you. This is a good rule. So where things get a little wonky is that this same scenario, the same rule applies even if you don't fumble it from a distance and it hits the pylon, which I think we agree the touchback is a reasonable outcome from that.
Yeah, agreed.
But it also happens if you as a runner are reaching for the pylon and you tap the pylon with the ball, which absent any other information is a touchdown.
Yeah.
But you are deemed by the referee not to be in total control of the ball at the time you tap the pylon. And where this gets especially problematic is that now all scoring plays are reviewed.
Yeah.
So you have a scenario where a player scores what appears to be a legitimate touchdown, but on this close review, this ball was sort of wobbling. Not only do they not get the touchdown, the ball actually goes to the other team.
If the ball is like out of the player's possession, and like it's recovered by the other team, that this makes sense, right? Because that's like kind of what a touchback is. But like you're saying, there's a scenario where a player could lunge for it, have like a wobbly handle on the ball, and then still come up with the ball, and
they could end the play with the ball in their hands. If as they're diving towards the pylon, it just wobbles enough, hits the pylon, and then they go out of bounds.
Are we going to talk about this more? Because to me, football at times is unwatchable. Any time that they do a slow-mo replay, and this is true in the professional and the collegiate sport, any time that we're like analyzing at the femtosecond level, whether or not a player has control of the ball, I just want to tear my own feet off as an excuse to not watch it. It's so terrible because like we listen to Bill Simmons all the time and he has this great take where he just says, we should just go to a bar where no one's invested in either team and asks an entire bar of sports fans, was that a catch? And if they say yes in real time, then it's a catch. Like, why are we doing this? Like this wobbly, like not control, is there control or not, is so frustrating. And this, like it's frustrating when is this a catch or not a catch? Like in the middle of the field. But this scenario is significantly worse, and this rule seems a really strange way to punish having a little bit of wobbliness on like your one-handed grasp of a football as you face first leap for a pylon.
It's crazy. Now, here's the reason it's not higher. So, I also just want to note, this happened famously last year to the tight end Austin Seferian-Jenkins for the Jets against the Pats.
Great name.
It ruled in the Patriots' favor, and I was, of course, very happy about that, but this was complete horseshit. Here's the problem. There's no fix. Because theoretically this could happen at a speed observable to the human eye, so just changing to the Bill Simmons replay rule doesn't fix this because it could theoretically just happen in real time. The only fix would be some change to this rule. The problem is if we treat the front pylon as being equivalent to some out of bounds portion of the end zone, which we have to, we can't change this rule because then you can fumble through the back of the end zone and not have it be a touchback. And we agree that is a good outcome. There is no real fix to this. It's just stupid...
Can't you just change the way it works depending on where the ball enters or exits the end zone?
Not really, because the pylon is a like physical representation of the boundary line of the end zone.
Of the front of the end zone.
The front/side. It's not really, because it's the exact corner.
But it's the front corner.
I know.
Like, why can't we distinguish? Like, it's pretty clear which is the front and which is the back. Like, what if we made it such that if you fumble while hitting the pylon, you get the ball at the 1, if you end up with the ball?
It could be.
I propose this.
I think maybe we move this up a little bit on the list because I think that that's a not unreasonable solution. I just have a problem with now distinguishing between that and other portions of the end zone boundary line.
I just don't know if I have as much respect for the sanctity of the end zone boundaries as maybe you do. And I also have less knowledge of the sport of football than you do. So this could be an extremely ignorant take that you're being polite about.
No, I'm not that polite. I think you're making a reasonable point. I think I maybe am being too rigid in my interpretation of how we define the end zone, but I do think I'm wary in all of these rules of I'm so fucking smart, me in my stupid basement, deciding how to legislate sports and introducing perverse outcomes.
2 things. 1, that is exactly what we're doing. Like, we are 2 guys in our living rooms in our fucking pajamas, like picking apart rules that professionals have put together. That's why we're here. The second thing is, I just don't have that much respect for like I don't believe in the infallibility of the rules makers because we just saw we just saw we can talk about it more later, but I don't know. This is just some outside the end zone thinking. That's all it is. But
I like that.
Let's move on to number 9. I like the way this is going so far.
Yeah, slowly.
Yeah.
So number 9 is one of the most egregiously stupid rules in sports, assuming I understand it correctly. Because there's a chance I don't. I actually consulted an NHL expert, so not a friend of the pod, because I don't think he's ever listened to it, but John, his cousin Tucker played semi-professional hockey, and he's a huge hockey fan, so I consulted him at work as to what this actual rule is, and he didn't know. Now, we can look at this 2 ways. One is, I might just get this rule wrong. The other way is that there is such a weird rule in hockey, which generally speaking has very simple rules, that even a hockey superfan and former semi-professional player doesn't understand it. So this is the rule whereby an offsides non-call can be challenged until the next whistle. So if the offensive team enters the offensive zone and play continues for 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 40, 50, a minute, whatever it is, and they eventually score a goal, the other team can challenge, hey, they were offsides.
Okay.
And basically they can go back and review that entire length of time for an offsides penalty, or for not a penalty, just an offsides violation. And this even includes if the offensive team, we believe this, I'm not 100% sure because the rulebook is unclear, but my recollection is that this is the case. The offensive team can enter the offensive zone,
okay,
exit, re-enter, and you can still just basically fish for a possible offside.
Even if a second opportunity to commit an offside.
Yes. Even if a second entry has
Oh
occurred.
my god.
Now.
That sounds terrible.
Now, like I said, I'm sure somebody listening knows that that's not the case. I am certain I have seen this happen. The NHL has taken an important step to legislate this, which is why it appears this low, because this is an egregiously dumb rule.
That's fucking silly. But I could I could even understand if let's say the offensive team enters the zone and you don't choose to challenge it right then because the play is still going on. And let's say it's on, it's like a 2-on-1 or something and they score.
Yes, and you cannot challenge in the act of a play.
Okay.
Yep.
The concept that like you could just hum-de-dum, let it go, and then have is there no limit? So like I could wait like 20 minutes, and let's say no whistles get called, and it goes an entire period. I could theoretically challenge every single time that you cross the offsides line.
That's my understanding. In practical terms, play doesn't continue for that long, but my understanding is theoretically. No, I know you know that, but I'm saying theoretically, I believe that is the case.
Well, that is
stupid.
That's a stupid rule.
Now, the NHL has taken a major step to legislate that out, which is that now, if you challenge an offsides call and get it wrong, you don't just lose a timeout, which are pretty unimportant in hockey. That was what it used to be. You actually are charged a penalty.
Oh. So you have to be really sure that.
Yes, you are now assessed a minor penalty.
Wow. And then you just pick a random guy to sit it?
I don't know. I assume the guy has to be on the ice, but that's not always the case. There are times, like if you're charged a major, and you have to send in somebody to serve like a concurrent minor, you can pick anybody. So I'm not sure exactly how they assess this. So they've worked to fix this. Point is, a couple big NHL fans have no idea what this rule is.
Yeah.
The NHL itself saw how screwed up this was and took steps to fix it, and they've gone a fair way to fixing it. But there have been times in the modern NHL when the referees were just going over minutes of film to find one offsides to negate a major goal.
That's silly. And that is not only doesn't like fall in line with the spirit of the game, it also just ruins the on ice product because that sounds miserable.
Well, and we won't actually get to this because just review generally. Think about the Patriots-Falcons Super Bowl and think about the fact that they score the winning touchdown and literally nobody celebrates. Tom Brady is telling people to get off the field just to be sure that they actually scored. Even though it was a reasonably clear touchdown, it takes away. Like I know when I watch football, a long pass gets completed, I'm just looking for the laundry. I'm looking, is there a flag? Is there a flag? Oh, okay. But it dampens your excitement.
And it does, but like, it's probably, well, in this case it's not, but we can talk more, like, getting plays right is ultimately probably more important.
Yes.
But anyways.
I agree.
Number 8.
Alright. Number 8. This is one that I just don't know why this rule exists. It's the 1 foot catch in college football. So the rule in professional football is that in order to be awarded a catch, you have to get 2 feet down inbounds. So assuming this is a catch near the sidelines, you have to get 2 feet down with possession and survive the ground. Basically, you got to catch the ball, tap your feet twice, and you got to not lose control of the ball as you go to the ground. Everything about that rule is the same in college, except you only need to get 1 foot down.
Which seems like a small distinction, but is such an incredibly different way that you can catch a football.
Huge. It is an enormous difference between getting 1 foot down and 2. Just anybody who's wondering about that, like, try to feel your abs as you try to do that, as you try to rip 1 foot down in the middle of the air. It's a very different thing, and it's a nod to amateurism that doesn't exist anymore. You and I both went to a school with big time college football. The guys who played on our varsity football team were, physically speaking, professional athletes. Those guys, yes, the wide receivers on our football team were not Terrell Owens. They were not AJ Green, Michael Thomas, whoever you want to pick. They were not them. But they were not us playing flag football either. Those guys can get 2 feet down. And if they don't, they should not be given a catch.
I feel like this is more to give quarterbacks a break than receivers in a way, because the window you can throw to is much larger. But it's definitely both.
Way larger. That's
Yeah.
a very good point. Like, way larger.
It's crazy. Well, like the height thing, like you could throw a ball realistically an extra foot high, like higher than you could if you needed to throw it at someone with 2 feet down, because you can get. But I think the important distinction, what makes this a stupid rule, is that this is not a rule that's rooted. It's not footed 1 or 2 feet in safety. So like I could understand
Yes.
if you wanted to protect a college athlete that's not getting paid whatever to do this, like you can't, you can't hit a certain way, or you can't whatever. But like really, I mean, it's not like it's safer to catch a ball with 1 foot than it is to catch it with 2 inbounds, is it?
No, I think what you're kind of alluding to is, like, take the targeting rule in college football, for example.
Yeah.
College football, they legislate hits to the head much more harshly than does the NFL. That's a good thing. It's a good thing for both leagues, but it's especially a good thing when you're talking about amateur athletes, at least amateur in name. But I think what we can agree is that these amateur athletes are not amateur in terms of skill. And so dumbing down the rule book for no reason other than because they're theoretically lesser is pointless to me.
Are we going to talk about a similar rule in college versus professional basketball, or is now a good time to talk about that?
We are going to talk about a similar rule. I assume we're thinking of the same one, but we are
probably
going to talk about that.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
So, we have just done numbers 10 through 8. Kyle, you know what that means?
If I wish I had some kind of, I don't know, just like an audio cue so that I knew if there was something we needed to do right now.
Hey, Allegius, should we play some music right now? Yes!
Thanks, Allegius and Kev.
Thanks, Allegius and Kev. You guys are the best.
Love it. Did you prepare a not top 3?
I've got a couple that I really like.
So, how are you defining this? Because my immediate reaction was a rule that I can only think of one. It's a rule that seems like it's fucking stupid, but is actually a really good rule.
Yeah, kind of. I was doing like rules that I think are great, but yes, specifically rules that I think are great that seem kind of stupid on the face of them.
Okay, shoot.
So I actually only have 2 written here. So one is the passed ball, like the drop third strike rule. I think that's a rule that some people find annoying. They don't like that if you swing and miss on a third strike in baseball, but it goes past the catcher, you can then go to first base. I love this rule because I think it's really important that pitchers not feel comfortable throwing wild pitches, because you risk slowing down play more if pitchers can just be diving curveballs into the dirt all the time. But I also think it just keeps them a little bit more honest in their pitching and forces more balls to go into the zone, which is a good thing.
I like it because it makes a 3-2 count feel like if it weren't for this rule, it's not like batters get on base all that often because of it, but it's probably because of this rule, right?
Right, yes, exactly. So they don't directly get on through application of this rule.
Yeah, it's more preventative. Like, it prevents, like, the stupid, like, throw it at his back ankle, like, snapper that... Like, you're definitely, like, you can throw that on 1-2 or 2-2, and it, like, makes a 3-2 feel a little bit like it's back in the batter's favor if you've managed to get it that far.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I that's a good one. The only... at a professional level, it's great. It sucks in anything, like, lower than college, because...
That's a good point.
Because realistically, like, if you, like, let's move this along, and there's a lot of instances where someone's on first base, so they don't have no right to be there.
Yeah, some 16-year-old asshole experimenting with a curveball. Throwing it into the dirt every time.
Yeah.
All right, so the other one I want to mention, which is one of my favorite rules and was tested sorely this weekend, I love that you cannot review penalties in the NFL. I think it would be a enormous mistake to allow reaction to this game to introduce the review of penalties into the NFL. Now, I will note one. I've heard people say that maybe they should only allow it in crunch time, so like the last 2 minutes or in the playoffs. Okay. I sort of get what you're saying. I have a major problem with prioritizing certain parts of the season or certain parts of the game over others, because I think, factually speaking, there is no difference to the weighting. You get 7 points for a touchdown and an extra point, whether that happens when the game starts or when the game ends. So I think weighting it that way is dumb. I think the Patriots will tell you, given the fact that they had to go to Arrowhead Stadium this past week, that losing in week 15 or whatever it was to the Dolphins, that felt just as shitty as it would have felt to lose in week 1. It was a problem. It kept them from having home field advantage. So I don't think that applying a rule only for a specific time of the game or a specific time of the season makes a ton of sense. I've heard that as a possible fix. I get it, and I won't be pissed if that's something that they think about. But as a broad-based rule, like allowing penalties to be reviewed, that is a can of worms we do not want to open.
I generally agree with you. I think that, like, with this play specifically, like, the way to fix this play is, like, this play is such an outlier because it's not a play that was questionable that, like, if you really looked at it closely, you could have fixed it. Like,
that's a really important distinction.
Because, like, 99 times, if this play happens 100 times, 99 times, it's 2 penalties. Like, you know, like, if
the ref is doing that thing where he goes, they've declined the interference, they're going to take the, targeting or whatever.
If you haven't seen this play, the play that basically ended the Saints-Rams game, watch it, because I expected to watch it as, like, a moderate NFL fan. I was like, I oftentimes am a little hung up on the intricacies of pass interference, and I wonder if this will be, obvious to me. I watched it. I was like, oh my God. Like, so anyways, so long story short, I agree with you. I don't think this means you should be able to review any damn play, because football will become even less watchable than it is sometimes. But whatever it means, like if it needs to be like an extra ref on the sideline, like a pass interference ref that is like looking for this kind of thing, fine. If you're going to do that though, I agree with you as well. Let's make it every game. The NFL can afford to pay an extra ref a game, right? Like,
no, they can't. No, they couldn't even afford to have full-time refs until recently. I actually, so Bill Belichick has actually raised that point, like an asshole he always does, about more cameras in the end zones. And he's like, what, you can't afford? He actually, like, in his proposal said something like, we can't afford the extra $5,000. But, I actually think that more than anything, this argues for the need for protesting the result of a game to be an actual thing. I think that you're talking about opening up a real can of worms there too, and I grasp how logistically complicated it would be. Yada yada yada. But maybe we're talking about. I think the Saints have legitimate grounds to protest that. I recognize the problems, but that seems to me a better fix.
I don't know, because in this game specifically, like, you could make the case that the Saints take 3 knees, they kick their field goal, the Rams have 10 seconds left. Like we can't, unless it's like a play like that happens as time expires and it literally could have gone either way. If there's any time left in the game, I feel like you can't really, and what are you going to do? Like replay the last 2 minutes or last minute of a game? And also, as every New Orleans Saints fan in the world would hate, or anyone really would hate to hear this, but like, this is also like why we love sports, right? Like, I'm not saying that this was a good thing, and if this happened to the Tigers, I would have an aneurysm. But like, at the same time, to overturn a game that the Rams did win in overtime would be a lot. So
right. And the final thing I think we should leave with, just because it's topical, is do not let our friends Drew Brees and Sean Payton off the hook. What the actual fuck was Sean Payton doing throwing on first down with 1:53 left with the Rams having like one timeout left? What are you doing? The game's over if you run that ball. That was so idiotic.
They're definitely getting off the hook because of this. And it's due to them because it's so insane. But at the same time, like, anyways,
what are you doing, man?
The only other,
all right,
I have one here for the not top three. The one I was thinking of was the infield fly rule, because
great rule. That's a great example.
It's a really good rule. You gotta have it, but it sure is confusing, and it seems stupid. The biggest one I can remember was like the 2000,
the Cardinals, right?
The Cardinals versus Braves, like 2000 whatever wild card game. Yeah, but it's a good rule. It prevents.
The only issue with the rule is it's bad branding because it's not actually the infield fly rule.
Yeah, well, I mean, well, what do you mean? Because
it can be
far
60, 70 feet into the outfield. We've seen that called.
Yeah.
It's more like the can of corn rule.
You should just call it like the prevents base runner catch 22 rule. Like,
yeah. There's no better branding. It's just the problem is it leads to some asshole being like, man, that wasn't in the infield, and you're like, all right, people.
One time, Cam and I went to a Tigers game, and Cam was just pretending to not know anything about baseball. He'd be like, Kyle, how come they don't hit it over the fence every time? Like, if they can just walk around the bases. Like, well, Cam, it's not always that easy. And he's like asking all these, like he doesn't understand the game at all. And then, like, in the seventh inning, he's probably really annoying everyone around us. And then in the seventh inning, I'm like,
of course.
I'm like, how does the infield fly rule work? And Cam just like dives into like a lengthy and articulated explanation of the infield fly rule. Man, we thought we were funny. All right, so that's enough of this segment.
All right, so number 7 is another baseball rule, but this is a really dumb one. This is if the game is not considered official, it restarts. So. If there's like a 17-hour rain delay in the third inning, and then the teams come out for the fourth for 5 minutes after everybody's gotten cold and everybody hates everything, and then they just decide that they can't finish the game, nothing happened. Nothing in that game happened. Now, so I want to take us to the extreme example. Barry Bonds. He's got 699 home runs. This game is played. It's the fourth inning, he hits the 700th home run. Game is put in a delay. They come back out for the second half of the fourth inning. He gets struck by lightning and dies. Game ends. He doesn't have 700 home runs. No. That game is not official.
That's true.
Like, now, actually, I think most people would view that as a good outcome that he didn't get 700 home runs. Not that he died. But this is not... That is so stupid. You can't just pretend that this... however many innings didn't exist. And the reason this is especially so stupid, the fix, Kyle? The fix. Just keep the game going when you restart, because here is the thing about the MLB.
Yeah.
They never allow a game to not get finished. MLB doesn't seem to understand that it does occasionally happen, but the MLB really hates to give people less baseball, even though all indications are people want less baseball. This is a pretty simple fix, and it allows them to give people less baseball, which is what they want.
Well, what's especially weird is that, like, the reverse is always, it's like you said, is always, like, if we play a game, if the Tigers play the Red Sox, and your Red Sox are pummeling the Tigers, it's 19-1 in the, like, 8th, and then all of a sudden the sky opens up and it rains everyone out of Fenway.
No, you're saying that they end it. Yeah, so I think what the point you're trying to make is they're so cavalier about ending the game and not caring about the integrity of like a full 9-inning game. The moment you've reached this magical threshold, that game could have real bearing. Yeah. And they just end it. Which is wild. Yeah. That on one end, they have such respect for the sanctity of a 9-inning baseball game.
Yeah.
And then on the other end, they're like, we played 7 innings. Who cares that they're coming back and this could have a real effect on the wild card race? Over.
Even though we played 5 1/3.
Yeah. It's so stupid.
Pretty arbitrary. That is a really dumb rule. What's number 6?
So, that's a dumb one. So another one that came up recently in the NFL playoffs was the guys ignore the ball and so the play is over rule. So this happened in the Chicago Bears versus the Eagles game in the divisional round. So basically the rule, in the wild card round. So basically the rule is, if something funky happens like a fumble, and guys on the field don't react quickly enough, the play is just over. It just ends. So this happens every once in a while. You'll see a running back fumble the ball, and people just kind of don't notice he's fumbled it, and the ball's just sitting on the turf, and then eventually the ref just kind of blows the whistle, and that's it. Now, the reason that this is not like number one, because this is such a dumb rule, is that the fix is easy. There's no rule fix. If you're a player, just pick up the goddamn ball and just play like you're playing. Keep going.
I just can't imagine a scenario where I'm a professional football player and I see a football on the ground and I don't just fucking grab that football.
Just pick it up, take a quick, and the other thing is, most guys in the field are not going to be chasing you, so if this is a scenario where you have to finish the play by returning it for a touchdown, jog in.
Well, and to be fair, you do see this a lot where someone fumbles and they're down, but it's not clear to people on the field that they're down. So some guy will pick it up and start running, and then some other guy will run behind him like he's gonna block. And then they keep looking back to see if they're gonna get called back. Yeah. And they almost always are. So I would say most players' tendency is to pick up the football and start running if they don't know one way or the other.
Yeah.
But it is a dumb rule that if nobody does, cause I want the scenario where everyone's just waiting, and the players go to line up or something, and the ref's huh, did you hear a whistle? And then
so this kind of happened. So this sort of happened. So my understanding is basically the moment the whistle blows, that's it. I don't think you can review anything that happens after a whistle in football, which is a weird rule. I'm kind of okay with it, but it's not on this list. No, it's not a spoiler, but I think that's basically the rule. And so that just reinforces the idea you have to play through the whistle. But this did happen in the Bears-Eagles game. Anthony Miller, who's a tight end for the Bears, had the ball and he was stripped by Crayvon LeBlanc, who's a cornerback for the Eagles.
Great name.
And basically the ball just sat there and nobody did anything, but it was very clear that ball had been stripped, and the Eagles could easily have just picked it up, but they just didn't, and the play just ended. It was so stupid. I think the easiest fix for the refs is to just really wait to blow the whistle, or make eyes at the guys come on,
play's not over.
Ball's live. Or scream, ball's live. There are kind of simple fixes for this. It's sort of a perverse outcome that everybody just stands there with their hands on their hips, which really did happen recently. I understand the logic behind this rule, and I think that the fix is primarily on the players, but man, it's a stupid situation.
It's a stupid situation, but I actually don't think it's that dumb of a rule, because the right thing happens. If no one wants the football and everyone thinks that it's just an incomplete pass or a tackle and no one goes for it, then I guess that is kind of what should happen. But I don't know.
I guess I just think people have been conditioned. I think the players have been conditioned into this by the idea that if they don't react quickly and aggressively enough, the moment has passed. I think their feeling is that the moment passes too quickly, and I think if the ref started to condition them that the moment hasn't passed until I look at you in the eyes and whistle and be like, you're a dumbass, that ball was yours to pick up, I think you could recondition the players to not react so slowly.
I wish I'd seen this. I missed that game, unfortunately. That would have been fun to watch.
It was very strange. It was a strange situation. So number 5, another NFL rule. The NFL is taking a beating here, but I think largely because it's the most complicated sport that exists.
It's so subjective.
It's not its fault. I do think that the NFL, some of the rules that the NFL has are just brilliant. The downs and the down and distance setup is just so perfectly calibrated for excitement.
Yeah.
But it necessarily adds a layer of complexity that's kind of unique. So this one is nothing to do with the rules of the game. It's the NFL being incredibly tone deaf and stupid. Just nothing new. The cleats. The penalizing and fining guys for... You can get penalized, on the field, for having cleats that they consider inappropriate.
We could spend an hour talking about all the ways in which the NFL is completely screwing up its brand, but this is like such an easy victory. Like, why are we not taking the points here, NFL? Like,
why not?
But I think baseball does the same thing. Like, you can't really wear wild cleats in baseball. Why? Because you're going to distract somebody? Cut me some slack. Like,
it's for the kids. It's for the kids.
Yeah. Why aren't we letting players express themselves or like have, God forbid, a player like can brand himself and make some money off his own shoes or something? I don't know. Like, this whole enterprise of professional sports is here for people to be entertained and cool. Like, and if you don't want to have people putting some, like, inappropriate stuff on cleats, then censor them. But like, why are we making people wear, like, look at basketball. Like, guys are wearing their own shoes and it's like.
So basketball is the perfect example. That's part of why this is so high. The fix is easy. Look at the NBA. The NBA says, yeah, whatever.
Or any professional soccer league in the world.
Yep. And the NBA now more explicitly says a whatever. Like, they actually expanded the allowed sneakers that you can wear on the court to basically just be like, yeah, you do whatever you want. Now, I understand the NFL. They have clearly botched everything to do with politics in basically the history of the NFL, but especially recently. So I can understand if there are limit cases in which they want to say, like, you can't have political slogans, or you can't, like you said, have curse words. I would actually I think we'd all survive if that were a rule. But in what reasonable world can you tell me Antonio Brown can't put, like, stripes on his cleats? Antonio Brown, even though it sounds like he's kind of a jackass now, is one of the most entertaining people on the face of the earth. And is a terrific football player, and those two things go hand in hand. He's entertaining because he's terrific, and he's partially terrific because he's entertaining. Like, his brand and people's perception of him as a football player is enhanced by how much they enjoy watching him as a person. And a big part of that is his style, and we'd get more of it if he had signature shoes.
I think this is something that baseball should have done a long time ago, because it's turned into a sport of old people and nerds, and like how much more fun would a kid have watching Bryce Harper or Mike Trout or Manny Machado if those guys had cleats? Like, can you imagine if Ken Griffey Jr. had cleats? Like, every kid on the fucking planet in 1998 would be wearing those cleats. Like,
yeah. And sure, some of these guys have endorsement deals where they have, like, a cleat, but it's not. No,
it's not. No one knows, like you see that, like, oh, it's a Bryce Harper cleat. It's a black cleat with, it's not, whatever. It's the cleat he wears, but it's not distinctly his.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a silly thing. And it's not like, I think it's not like you change this rule and then NFL and MLB players are like, I kind of like these team issued cleats. Like, this would change things.
Yeah, they'd have fun with it. It's a real travesty. Hate when guys have fun.
Seems like a missed opportunity.
Yeah. Alright, so number 4 is a rule that this is just one of the most inexplicable rules in the history of rules to me. It's the rule where inside 2 minutes at the end of a basketball game, if you call a timeout after the other team scores, they move the ball up to midcourt for you to inbound it.
Why?
What? Why? This makes no sense. This is completely inexplicable. It makes no sense. If there's one thing that the last 2 minutes of NBA basketball has enough of, other than interruptions of play, it's drama. People talk about, like, crunch time, 2 minutes, like, fourth quarter. Basketball is very, very well known for how competitive those last 2 minutes of the game are. It doesn't need a little extra dose of competition by doing this, because that's the only logical basis I can imagine, is that you'd say, well, it allows for more last-minute buzzer-beater shots to be attempted.
Yeah, but, like,
it doesn't need it.
It works both ways, too, though, because, like, if you score at the last second at one end of the court, and then all of a sudden, like, the other team has a chance to rebut, like, you've kind of, like, dampened the exciting part of that first bucket. So, like, You know what I mean? Like, it can work both ways.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's like, that would be like, I don't know, like you get to start like 10 yards further up if you like call a timeout, like just after someone kicks an extra point, or like I don't know, you start with a man on first. Like why are we like giving someone, it's just like an arbitrary advantage that doesn't make any sense. And when put into other sports contexts, like I just did, it's wild to even like conceive something like that. It really
stands out how stupid it is in other sports the way you just described it.
Yeah, that makes no sense, Mike.
Yeah, and the fix is really easy.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
That's an easy one to fix.
Very easy one to fix. All right, so that brings us to number 3, because I have no honorable mentions, and I figure you can do some if you've got any. I thought you might have a couple baseball ideas. I wouldn't be surprised if you had some baseball ones.
Almost everything I have written down is a baseball thing, but
I figured. So I was kind of thinking we'll finish the list, and then I'd like you to kind of run through some baseball ones too.
Yeah.
Okay. So this one's tough. We're wading into very murky waters here. Number 3 is just everything about the term football move. So, for those of you who do not know, this is one of the critical components to a catch. Is somebody establishes possession, whatever the hell that means, of a football, and makes a football move. Kyle, what the fuck is a football move?
This reminds me of, quick aside. When we were young, we lived across the street from a kid named Luke, who was extremely athletic, and we played outside a lot, and we'd play catch all the time with various balls, be it baseballs, footballs, whatever. But he felt the need to specify, like, which type of catch we were going to play, so he would say, like, do you want to play some baseball catch? And, like...
No way.
Yeah, he'd be like, you want to play some football catch?
Sounds like an alien. This is like a Russian sleeper.
Isn't that a weird thing to do? And, like, it actually makes perfect sense, because, like, if he says, hey, want to play some catch? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm thinking baseball and he's thinking football. Yeah. Like, that's a tragic miscommunication. Not really.
Yeah, you bring your glove out and you look like an idiot.
Oh, we live across the street. It's not the end of the world. I'll just not wear my glove. But, like, it seems like him saying that, like, should be lauded as like a clever way of like solving this tiny dilemma we might have, but it's not. Yeah. It's just dumb, and that's what this reminds me of, even though they're not really related at all.
No, I like that, because the awkwardness of the phrasing is just one of the many things that sticks out about this and makes it such a reviled term.
Yeah,
it's so weird it doesn't feel right on the tongue. Like, gotta make a football move. Oh, okay. So here's my problem with this rule. It is so nebulous and ill-defined that quite literally nobody knows what a football move is.
But what really irks me, though, is that that's obviously intentional. Like,
yes.
You wouldn't call it a football move if you had a clear idea of what it was, if you're the rule maker. Like, they're intentionally leaving it to interpretation, it feels like.
So here's my sympathy for the term football move. As I was thinking about fixes to this rule, I realized that one of the best fixes for this would be cataloging basically every scenario that could happen in a catch situation and saying whether this is a catch or not.
Okay.
And in that sense, broadening out all of those scenarios into football move, it makes some sense for the sake of brevity, but it does not help with clarity.
Call it like a forward move, or like I guess it doesn't need to be a forward move. Okay.
So here's my fix. I'll explain my fix, which I think gets to the heart of why football move is dumb. Here's the standard I would like to apply. Have you noticed that what constitutes a catch in the end zone and what constitutes a catch in the middle of the field seem to be very different things? This is my fundamental problem with football move. If the ball is thrown to me and I'm in the end zone, and I catch the ball, I get possession of the ball in my hands, and my feet touch the ground, basically nothing that happens after that matters. Assuming that it is not a real bang play that somebody just strips the ball out of my hands. The way that we interpret that is I've got possession of the ball in my hands and I've touched 2 feet down and nothing happened in the immediate aftermath of that.
Yeah.
That is considered a touchdown. And that is not at all the way it is in the middle of the field. For some reason, we have higher expectations of a player in the middle of the field that they immediately run with the ball. Or
That's
something
actually
happens.
true though, because like think about a scenario where someone on the 2-yard line like reaches for the end zone and the tip of the ball gets over, and then like the only question we have whether or not that was a touchdown is whether or not the dude's knee was down before the ball crossed the plane. Whereas if you reverse that play 20 yards and this is happening at the 15-yard line, like that's not a first down, right? If you just get the tip of the ball just past the first down pylon.
It is a first down.
Doesn't feel like we're analyzing it with that type of like.
But so you're right. But I think the interesting thing is the level of scrutiny is higher at the goal line than it is in the field of play, which is what you're describing.
Yeah.
Whereas it's the exact opposite in this scenario. You get away with shit in the end zone in this catch rule, this football move rule, that you don't get away with in the field of play, which I think seems backwards. If anything, frankly, I think it should just be the same. So that's the standard I would like to apply, is if this play happened in the end zone, would we rule it a touchdown? If I throw the ball to you and this thing happens in the middle of the field, if we transported you to the end zone, would we have called it a touchdown? And if the answer is yes, that's a catch.
I mean, if you put it to a vote, I'd vote for it.
Yeah, so I think I don't even think this requires necessarily a rule change so much as an emphasis change.
Yeah.
But the emphasis is so bad and so ambiguous that it causes so many freaking problems.
And it just sounds stupid, I think, is my biggest beef.
Yeah, that's definitely a beef. All right, so clocking in at number 2 is a rule that I think you were alluding to earlier, which is like, why is this thing a rule? Which is the possession arrow in college basketball versus the jump ball. So I thought this was what you were talking about, the distinction between the college and the pro rule. So in college basketball, when there's a jump ball, there's no jump ball.
Yeah.
It's called a jump ball, but there's no jump ball.
Yeah.
There's this possession arrow, which literally just alternates between team A and then team B, and then team A and then team B. There is no merit involved with this. You could have a 10-foot tall guy who doesn't need to jump for the jump ball, and you're not helped by that at all because there's no jump ball. They do it at the opening tip.
See, the scenario that you've just described feels to me like the reason this rule exists because like in high school, like one team just had a really tall guy, so any jump ball that team would win. And so they're like, well, we'll just alternate each time. But like, by the time we get to college, like we don't need to do this anymore, right?
Exactly. So this is another rule that I think it comes from this misplaced sense that these college students are amateur athletes.
Yeah.
And maybe this was true in 1950 whatever, when they, it was the Hoosiers. Like, I know that's a high school team, but the point is, I get the basis of this rule when it was created. At this point, do we really think that Zion, what's his name, and the guy on the other team shouldn't just take a jump ball? Why does this exist anymore?
The level of competition is such in college basketball that if your team has a guy that's way taller, then like you just deserve to get the ball, right? Like
exactly, because you did a better job inducing them with your illegal recruiting tactics. Like you get them.
It's not like the jump ball is so dead even that they're like, why are we doing this? Let's just alternate. And it's and it's also not like the jump ball results in like a freakishly large amount of freak injuries. So like, so it's not a safety concern. It's really just like, let's just let everyone have the ball a little bit.
Yeah.
It feels like, you know who's going to have a field day with this podcast is Quinn. I shuddered.
I think Quinn will enjoy this in one sense and eviscerate it in another sense.
I can't wait to, I'm terrified.
I'm sure it's riddled with factual inaccuracies.
Certainly.
I have a feeling I've recollected a lot of these things incorrectly.
I think that we are unequivocally wrong on a lot of this, and I also think that our opinions on the things we're not clearly wrong on are also wrong.
Probably. Those are probably things. But luckily we have an asterisk in the name of our podcast,
That's true.
So we're good.
Thanks, liability asterisk.
Yes. All right, but number one is the dumbest rule in all of sports with just, there's no question. This is the attesting to your score in golf rule, which is that after you have finished playing a round of golf, you have to sign your scorecard, and you are responsible at this point. I believe it's a 2-stroke penalty for attesting to an incorrect scorecard. Now, this represents a major bit of progress from when this rule was even worse, which was that if you signed the scorecard incorrectly, you actually were disqualified. And on top of that, and this portion of the rule still exists. I think they may have actually just changed this, but you were responsible for any retroactively applied penalties that would then invalidate your score. So let's say,
oh my God.
Yes. So let's say you attested to scoring a 67, and then after the round, somebody realized that you had illegally grounded your club on the 5th hole, and you now actually had scored a 68. You would have been guilty of attesting to an incorrect scorecard and be disqualified.
Even though no one caught it until after the round?
Yes.
Wow.
This was a scenario that could actually occur. And as I looked this up, because I needed to find a scenario where this like really cost somebody, because this came up, somebody lost a tournament last year on this. They attested to an incorrect scorecard, and it was just a travesty. But in 1968, Roberto De Vicenzo was supposed to go to a playoff against Bob Golby in the Masters. The Masters.
So a big golf tournament.
A big golf tournament. And he accidentally attested to the incorrect score, was assessed a, whatever it was at the time, some stroke penalty. His score was invalidated, and he did not get to participate in the playoff. Lost to the Masters on this rule.
It feels like as bad as the Saints losing on Sunday. Almost.
Yes. Now, let me be very clear, because I will be fact-checked on this, and the rule has changed and the penalty has become less severe, as I mentioned. Here's the question. Even if they have taken some intermediate steps towards making this less harsh, which they have, why does this rule exist? Now, I understand why this rule existed, which is that you have golfers all over a golf course playing all over the place. It would be infeasible in 1950 whatever to have somebody watching all of them all the time.
That's the problem with this rule, is that it feels like it's just a thing that we're keeping around because it's a golf thing, right?
But here's the thing, Kyle. If you're the 79th best player on the PGA Tour, you are easily pulling down hundreds of thousands of dollars, more like millions of dollars, in tour winnings in a year.
Right.
They could afford to staff appropriately at these tournaments, but much more importantly, they have a big freaking scoreboard that they're keeping they're keeping it live.
Right.
So whatever the exact mechanism is by which they're keeping score on that live scoreboard, you've got it. You're keeping score.
Why do we need a player to sign off on a piece of paper? That's a silly rule. That would be like your team, if you're an outfielder and you get caught sleeping and you start running off the field and there's only 2 outs, that would be like your team gets an out because you thought there were 2 outs.
Yeah, it's insane.
Actually, that'd be awesome.
It would be kind of fun. But it's just, this one, there is no defense for it. And the egregiousness of the penalty is just so extreme.
Yeah.
And one thing that I have heard people point out, because they've heard people complain about this rule before, that I think is a very good point, is with the advent of assholes watching these tournaments on TV and calling in penalties, because that's a thing in case you didn't know.
Fuck that.
People watch the tournament and call it in.
Oh my God.
The players whose holes are broadcast most frequently are the best players, so they're disproportionately being affected by this. Because, Kyle, the 77th or whatever number I said, best player on the tour.
No one's watching me ground my club on The
Nope.
fourth fucking hole, yeah.
No, but poor, Dustin Johnson, everybody sees every blade of grass moving under his club.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
It's a dumbass rule.
It is a dumb rule. I'm surprised that's the only golf rule we talked about.
Yeah, the golf kind of, I think, falls generally into a similar category to baseball, which is its unwritten rules are the dumbest part.
Yeah.
And this is a case where it's basically an unwritten rule that's been committed to writing, and it looks much worse when written.
Yeah. I have a bunch of baseball rules, basically. We'll just run through some baseball ones. Well, one football one. So this one got brought up also on Sunday. I'd be curious to get your take on it. The way that NFL overtime is structured is, to me, very stupid. Like,
yeah,
the fact that we didn't get to watch Patrick Mahomes touch a football in that overtime is silly. Like, the Chiefs should have been given a chance to score a touchdown, right?
Probably. I think probably.
Pretend this is Rams Chiefs.
No, I know. It's probably. So I also saw a stat that the team that wins the toss actually only wins the game like 52% of the time in overtime. So I think that the step that the NFL took to change this from what it used to be was a huge step, because it used to be you could just kick a field goal, which is insane. That was so stupid. That shouldn't let this rule off the hook if it has problems. I just think that in practice, it actually works up to pretty close to a 50-50 split in who wins, which proves, at least on some level, that it's kind of working.
Okay, that's fine. I actually don't really care about the percentages. Like, I just think that it's the whole point again is for us to watch these two teams do battle. And if a team, like, this is, I think, in my opinion, the worst case scenario, a team comes back from like 20 points down to force overtime, and by virtue of a coin flip, they're not allowed to touch the ball. Like, as a fan, I'm disappointed in that result.
So I'm kind of torn because I partially agree. I think that there's logic in this issue, like raising the problem that a team doesn't get the ball makes sense. Like, I do think that makes sense. But I think part of the reason that it feels this way is that teams are so afraid to take the chance and play this the way that actually is not a bad move, which is to defer and then have the easy route of kicking a field goal. The Pats pulled that move on the Broncos in a really famous back and forth game it was the 2012-2013 season, I believe, where they ended up, the Pats deferred, and they got the ball back, kick field goal, win. I think that people are so afraid of making that decision that we don't see this rule play out. We don't see the favorable way this plays out to the team that doesn't get the ball first, where I think that scenario really does exist.
I suppose, but I think that's a dumb one.
I think you're probably right. The fix is easy enough, right? Just guarantee each team a possession.
Yeah. So that's just, I just want to see like more football, and if I were the Chiefs fan, I would be just sad, even though it's not really like a rules violation. I just bummed out. So another one kind of in the same vein as the 1 foot catch is the college 3-point line. It's a little different just because, like, in general, college players tend to be like a lot smaller than NBA players, but I don't know. You see guys play on like an NBA 3-point line, and like you can see it on the court at times, and they seem to make it fine. So
yeah.
Now a bunch of baseball ones. So almost every sport has some kind of mechanism in place where overtime is resolved very quickly. Baseball has no such rule. A baseball game, in theory, could last forever without any rule change.
It almost did this past fall.
Yeah, what a game. Okay.
Yeah.
And so it leads to some like interesting stories, but like for anyone to say that game was fun would be lying. Like, that kind of sucked.
There was a whatever it was, 6-inning stretch where a actual superhero emerged from a phone booth and put together one of the greatest athletic displays I've seen in my career as a sports fan. That aside, and and we have to really understand how unlikely it was for something like that to happen. That was garbage.
Yeah.
That was hot garbage. That was an insult to all Americans who were watching that game. It was insulting.
It sucked. And I know baseball has been talking about a scenario where in extra innings you start with a runner on second, which I think is an elegant and appropriate solution because it actually, like, as kitschy as that is, like, we can't have games that go 16, 17 innings because it actually dilutes the product in the remaining games you have in that week or on that homestand.
Well, that's the thing. The hangover effect is so real. I think what you're getting at though is an interesting point and an important one. I was thinking about this with the NFL overtime rule. The gimmicky piece is, it's hard to navigate making a good, quick overtime rule that doesn't feel gimmicky. And the NHL struggled with that for a while with like, do we go immediately to a shootout? Do we do a shootout after a period? But
the
now
3-on-3 is so perfect.
Yep, it's great. They do, it starts 4-on-4 and then it's 3-on-3 and it's like that's a great rule and it's a little bit gimmicky, but it resolves itself. It's fun to watch and it doesn't feel like you're messing with the essence of the sport.
It felt a lot gimmicky-er before they started doing it. And now it's like the best thing about the NHL and to the point where now they do that 3-on-3 tournament. Like it's an incredible rule, and I think baseball could do something. Put a runner on first then. You know, like whatever.
Yeah.
What we were talking about earlier, in the MLB playoffs, you get 2 extra umpires down the line to judge fair and foul balls that are a little far away for the first or third base umpires to see. Fine. Like, why are we not doing this? Like, baseball generates billions of dollars of revenue every year. Also, if we're gonna have extra umpires to do this, can we get the call right? I remember the first year they did this, Joe Mauer should have had a double at Yankee Stadium and they called it foul. Even though the line judge is right there.
Jesus. What does an ump make? Like, I gotta think that a major league ump is making like 150 to 200 grand. Joe West is probably making more, but I would think that like your average major league umpire is making somewhere in that range. I gotta think that they can hire an extra 15 of those or 16 of those guys.
You would think.
Somehow.
I would think so.
It feels like they got the budget, like an extra $2 million. I don't know.
Billions of dollars.
Even with healthcare, like I think they can afford it.
So there's that one.
Yeah.
I don't like how long baseball teams have to review a play before they decide they want to officially challenge it. So like you have like up to 15 seconds, I think, to do it, which means that you have time to like have someone run downstairs and watch the video and like do it for themselves before you alert the umpire. I believe that a player should have to request it on the field.
Oh, I like that.
I think that would really, because you'll see a lot of times guys will say like, review it. Like, I know I was safe. And usually they're right.
Yeah.
I just think that it, like the process of like having someone watch it before they decide if they want to review it is stupid and it slows it down. I would love to see it given to the players.
That is interesting, but I will say as a Patriots fan, the corresponding situation in the NFL is such that we get a major advantage because we've got this crazy guru named Ernie Adams who is in charge of our challenges, and he is spending so much time like getting that video so quickly and then watching it and making a good decision that I don't know. I don't like the possible domino effect of this rule finding its way into the NFL.
I think what you've just said means that it for sure should be implemented hopefully next season.
Probably. Yeah, probably.
This one is already in the works. It's probably changing within the next year or two. I don't think you should be able to have as much time as you want between pitches. I think it's ridiculous.
Yeah, this is a travesty.
And the thing is, most guys do fine with it, but some guys do not, and it really makes baseball hard to watch. A sport that, like, desperately needs to be injected with something to make it more appealing. Like, can we just make guys not take 40 seconds between pitches? Can we do this?
Yeah.
We can. It's not that hard.
Yes.
They're working on it. It'll come. That one's coming. I would not rank it high because, like, the likelihood that it's changed is very high. Yeah. One that I'm serious about and that we don't have time to actually debate here is not whether or not the DH is a good or a bad idea, but the stupid rule is that the rule is different depending on where you play.
Yes.
What the fuck is this? It's completely unprecedented and has no place in any sport. And it's not done at any level of the sport. It's like, it's such a strange, like if I had, like, if, let's say we didn't do this, and like, let's say there were DHs everywhere. Like, the reverse argument is so silly. Like, if there were DHs from the beginning of time, and people were like, this is dumb, and I proposed to you, like, well, let's just only have the National League pitchers pitch. Like, what the fuck? No! Like, when did we decide that it was cool for one half of the sport to play with a certain set of rules, and not the other half? It creates weird, dumb matchups in the playoffs. I fall on one side of this argument. I think it should be universalized. I like the DH. I think people that like the pitcher have a fair argument that it should be no DH.
Yeah, but nobody has an argument that it should be different.
No, it doesn't make...
I'll give you the argument, though. The argument is a historical one, which is that baseball, more so than any other league, actually keeps its leagues separate. Let's call them conferences, just because it's easier, because it goes across sports better. The two conferences, I think, I'd have to look, maybe you correct me, I think that there is less interconference play in baseball than there is in any other sport.
Certainly.
Okay, so if we accept that premise, then we accept that the crossover is limited intentionally to preserve the distinctness between those two leagues. And if we accept that they play each other that little, then I think that makes this a little bit more okay. The issue is if you reverse that logic, which I think is the real logic at this point, which is that they play each other so little because the rules are different.
Well, yeah, that's definitely part of it, because, like, well, we can't have them playing every day because then pitchers would be hitting all the time.
Which is stupid.
Right.
So if you go in one direction or the other, it's a little bit more of like a cute historical quirk. If you go in the other direction, it's a stupid continuation.
The historical precedent is that it used to be two completely different organizations. The American League was run by these people, and the National League was run by these people, and they said, wouldn't it be cool to prove who's better if we played at the end of the year? But now it's all one organization. And, like, now, it used to be, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, that there was even less interleague play. Like, you might play 10 interleague games in a year, which is such a small percentage of your total games that, like, you could swallow it a little easier. There's an interleague game happening, and it was like limited to like a few weeks in July.
That was so this is part of why the romance of that was real.
Yeah. It certainly was. Because there was novelty to it.
Yes, because it really was that just like week or 2 weeks was July, right? You said? Yeah, there was, I remember, you'd be like, ooh, interleague play's coming up. And you'd get a chance to see some player you never got to see.
But now
before.
It's like, and now it's like the Tigers play, like, they play in Miami in April, and then it's like an interleague series or two a month. Like, it's no longer a novelty. And this, to me, but it doesn't feel like this is gaining traction. Like, I don't see it changing until some pitcher, like, breaks his scrotum while sliding into a bag, like, whatever it is. So, I would like to put
the old Andy Bernard.
Yeah, I would like to see this one on the actual list. I think it's one of the strangest and dumbest phenomenon in sports.
Yeah, I think I think you've made a good argument.
So we sure are getting along in the tooth here. I would throw DH versus no DH on here. I like the way that you've ordered this. I would move the 1 foot catch higher, because I think that the reasoning behind this rule is some of the stupidest among the rules on this list, and and doesn't have very good, like, there's no like historical precedent or like ambiguousness that needs to be like sorted out. And the solution is so easy. I think, like, for those reasons, the 1 foot catch should probably move up, but I don't really want to argue too much about anything else.
Okay. I think on the off chance that I've totally fucked up the unlimited review timeline for NHL offsides, I want to be safe and pull that off the list.
Okay.
And then I think move everything back a spot from wherever we think the inconsistent DH rule should be, which is probably high.
I would put the inconsistent DH rule up at like in the 3-4 region.
Yeah, that's my inclination. I actually think it should go above football move.
Yeah.
Simply because football move is by its nature ambiguous and therefore sort of hard to argue against.
Yeah, I would actually move football moves below the 2-minute, like the half court NBA rule.
Yeah. The only reason the football move, I think, so I agree, but I just want to make sure I give it the appropriate reasoning. It's so impactful.
Yeah.
Like the thing, like that Zach Ertz in the Super Bowl situation. Nobody on the field or watching knew whether a Super Bowl play was a touchdown or even should be. Like there was clear video evidence of what happened, but nobody knew what happened.
Right.
So, but let's move it back. I think we go golf, possession, DH, inbounds, football move.
And then, what do you think about moving the 1-foot catch up to there?
Yeah, I'm down with that.
So then the 1-foot catch at 6, cleats.
Yep.
Ignore the football rule, rain out rules in baseball, and then pylon touchbacks. It seems like what we've just taken close to 90 minutes to do is develop a definitive top 10 list of stupid professional and collegiate sports rules.
I think we have, but I think I got so confused in the ranking that I'd like you to read the list.
Number 10, the pylon touchback rule in football. Number 9, baseball's inconsistent rainout rules. Was it a game or wasn't it?
Does 9 innings matter? No. Sometimes yes.
No. Sometimes yes. Okay, number 8, the one where if you just ignore football long enough, it goes away. Number 7, the fact that you can't customize your cleats in the NFL, and also baseball, I guess. Yeah. Number 6, the fact that you only need to have 1 foot down to make a legit catch in college football. Number 5, the football move rule. What is a football move? We don't know.
Nobody knows. Is Joe Flacco elite?
Well, number 4, the NBA rule wherein you get the ball at half court if you call a timeout towards the end of a game. Number 3, the completely indescribable rule wherein one half of the sport plays by a completely different set of rules than the other. The DH.
And an important rule.
Yeah, not like cleats.
Salary cap ramifications, on-field ramifications.
The health of your players ramifications. Number 2, the possession arrow in college basketball. No jumping! And
Shall not jump.
And number 1, wherein a player must attest to his own score in golf, despite all the ways that we track scores separately.
All right, K-Dog, thank you. That was a fun one.
Very, very
good.
And
a long one.
Yes. Thank you, Michael.